Okay, thank you. Try it again. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Litchfield Capital Improvement Planning Committee meeting of Monday, June 15, 2020. We will call this meeting to order. I will forego the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll open it up first this evening. We'll have a public input session. Is there any members of the public that are on this call or WebEx that would like to address the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to the business this evening. Did everyone get an opportunity to look at the meeting minutes from the last meeting? Are there any questions or issues, concerns? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minute meetings as written.
Okay. Steve made a motion. Who made the second?
Brian.
Brian made the second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Discussion? All those in favor of approving of the minutes signify by saying aye. We'll do a roll call vote. Aye. Michael Croto, aye.
Stephen Weber, aye.
Ryan Burke, aye.
Sean Flynn, aye.
Pete Stone, aye.
Okay. You. All right, motion passes. Are there any abstains or any opposed? If not, motion passes 5-0-0. Okay, thank you. All right, we have a couple things on the agenda this evening. We have Conservation Commission with us this evening. We have fire, police, and we may go into discussion later on about the discussion we had last week, which was the possibility of what is going to happen to the police station if it does go into another building, and also Griffin Memorial School. But first this evening, I want to turn it over first to Troy. Maybe you can lead us into this, and then we'll address the Conservation Commission piece of this first.
Okay, sure. Well, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, we have 3 items that are on the agenda this evening. The first, I've asked Joe McKibben, the chairman of the Conservation Commission, to attend this evening to summarize the discussion she had last week with the Conservation Commission. And they have a request of $2 million to be added to the CIP plan for acquisition of open space land. Then when we finish that conversation, I will have, I spoke to the fire chief today, and the chief and his deputy, I do believe, will be calling in, and they'll go through their request where they have 2 fire engines that they've submitted for the plan. And then Chief Sergeant, he's already on, and he's provided us with up-to-date sort of architectural conceptual drawings of what the new police facility would look like attached to the fire station. And he's had some work with Ekman Construction and his architect on doing some cost estimating for the construction costs. So those are the 3 items we have. And then, as you said, you have some other, I apologize for missing the last meeting. So I'll be interested in hearing the conversation about the police station, constructing new versus renovating the old Griffin School.
Okay. All right. So first off, this evening, we'll start with Conservation Commission. Joan, you want to introduce yourself to the board?
Yes, good evening. Joan McKibben from the Conservation Commission. And we did meet the first Thursday in June and discuss the capital improvements program. We are working with a couple of landowners and their properties. We have things in the works. One we have gotten an appraisal on, and one other one we've been working with for several years. So we thought that $2 million over 5 years would be a good place to start. Land in southern New Hampshire is quite expensive, as you know. The tracts that we're looking at do abut property that we already own, so they're quite attractive for the town. And any questions about that?
Yeah, I actually just have a couple of quick questions, and Jay, you might be able to answer one of these. I guess my first question is, how many acres of land right now do we own?
I couldn't give you a number off the top of my head.
Okay.
We have recently, this year with the tax maps, we have colored up all the town-owned property. Some of it we've acquired through land through purchase, and some of it we've acquired for offset mitigation. And of course, the state forest is not ours. So I should have that number, but I don't have that right now.
Okay. So then my question, Jay, you could probably answer this, is there like a formula as far as how many acres, given any town percentage-wise that they should like have? Or is it just too many variables?
There really are too many variables. There isn't one standard. I mean, it really comes down to what the conservation and open space goals of the town are. You know, some towns like Hollis have a very high percentage that's in conservation. Some, like a couple of your neighboring towns, really don't have a significant percentage. So there really isn't a rule of thumb.
Okay. So it's like no percentages, too much.
Well, I mean, it's a balance that I think that every town has to, seek to achieve between its, economic development goals, its overall development goals, and its conservation and open space goals. So they're different. I could come back to you with an average, but I couldn't say it's a standard, if that's helpful.
A number of years ago, Regional Planning Commission had the commissions go through and prioritize their land that they were interested in, and we have that document. Some of it's outdated, but we do know where the valuable pieces are, either for habitat or for connecting to other pieces of open space.
Is that something to be shared with the committee?
Yeah, it's a little bit, like I say, dated. I forget how old it is, but we could probably update it.
We do have updated mapping on priority habitat areas. So if that's of value or interest, I can provide that also.
Because the Wildlife Action Plan is very up to date for the state.
I think anything would be helpful, even if it is a little bit out of date. And at the same time, we could also find out how much acreage right now you do have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can find that out.
Joan, how much acreage
John,
would you want to purchase with this $2 million ask?
Well, it depends on, what land values are. Like I said, we just got an appraisal. Actually, the landowner did the appraisal, and I thought it was a little high. But we did pay $600,000 for that 13 acres on 3A that we bought where the boat ramp is. But that had a lot of frontage. This other piece doesn't have a lot of frontage, but it came in pretty high.
Okay, thank you.
And Joan, this is Andrew Cutter. Thank you for coming to present to the committee tonight. Question for you. Do you have a plan for, for this land that you'd like to acquire? What's the intentions of it?
Yes, the piece that we're working on now, and I really don't want to divulge the price and the parcel, obviously. It does abut another parcel where we were trying to get trails from the Albuquerque Avenue through to the library, but the piece that we own is pretty wet, which would, I don't even know if we would get wetland permits to do that. The piece that we could acquire, hopefully can, would give us a little more dry land to try and make trails through from Albuquerque to the library.
So it's for the specific intention of creating an extension to a trail system.
Right. That piece is right.
And are there other, you said that you're working with a couple of different landowners, so what's the other intention
Another
for the
landowner
other
that
land
we've
that
been
you're...
working with, another landowner that we've been working with over time has river frontage, which is quite attractive, and also abuts property that we own. So that would, be quite attractive to add to what we already own.
Okay. So the first is from Albuquerque to the library, right? If I understood, it's more dry land than we already own. And the second is abutting river, right?
Right, right, the Merrimack River, correct.
Yep, got it.
From an allocation of funds standpoint, do you know the timing of each of these two purchases? Is one of them in the near future, the second one further down the road?
Exactly. One of them is in the near future. We actually put in a grant for the one that's in the near future, and I'm meeting with the grant person Wednesday, but they won't, and we filed an intent to apply, but they won't let you know till the end of the summer whether you should apply, if you're in the ranking, to apply for the whole thing. But we did apply for a grant for that one. And the other one that's on the river, I've been talking to the person for probably 5 years or more, and they're getting to the retirement age, and they said within 5 years that they would really like to move on it.
Okay, thank you.
This is more of a general question, comment, more so to the committee. I don't know how we prioritize this as a committee, right? I don't want to sound like, the devil's advocate here or the guy who's playing hardball in this committee. But, when I hear about $2 million for creating a trail system when we have real needs in this town, such as a police department, such as, GMS, which are significant dollars, I don't see how we prioritize this.
And that $2 million is not specifically for just the two parcels. That's to, try and get us through the next 5 years as things become available.
So this money is to be used for basically if we have properties that, or the Conservation Commission has properties that are available, that you can use that money for that specific purpose.
Right, and not everything that comes up available is, is anything that some pieces are parcels that we don't want. So if they're just out there in the middle and don't connect to anything, there's not really much value to us.
And presently, the conservation land is funded by impact fees, has been what we've done in the past?
No,
No?
not impact fees. It's funded by current use monies.
Current use, that's it. Okay, thank you.
And
$1
the grant that we just...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
The grant that we just put in is from Land and Water Conservation Fund, which money comes from offshore oil drilling. So that's been around the state. That's how we got Moore's Falls, actually, from that money. So we try to leverage the money that we have. Michael, you had something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, so this $2 million, does that include anything else, or is it just the land acquisition
Land acquisition.
specifically?
And appraisals would come out of, if we had to, we do have to have appraisals. Appraisals would come out of that.
Do we know how much an appraisal costs for particular parcel?
Depends on the size of the parcel, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. And how much, if you want a general appraisal or in-depth, they'll do either or.
Does anybody have anything else for Joan?
Yeah, it's Troy Brown here. I'd like to point out that I think Jay kind of mentioned this earlier when he was trying to talk about community goals and priorities. And so this is coming from the Conservation Commission, where they're coming, straightforward for conserving land for certain types of habitat. They're looking to connect the conservation land they have, and creating those connection points. And I think when they say, well, it would connect and we have a trail, but I think there's a bigger discussion to have here when you really take a look at the town making an investment in preservation of land. And that land could be for conservation purposes, preserving our key agricultural soils, to maintain the community character that we have. And also, the discussion about where are those land tracts that could actually open up to very large residential subdivisions, and could you accomplish preserving that land for conservation, recreation, passive recreation type uses, and also kind of control the growth of residential growth in your community. So, I think if we just focus on, when we just use the term conservation land, I think you need to look at the overall goal and what it is that we're trying to do. And you try to, the key parcels are the ones that sort of fit all the criteria. So you've got this 100-acre parcel that we know the developers would love to get their hands on, throw up, a very large residential subdivision. That it could have some agricultural land to it. It could have some great conservation lands, some wetlands. But by the town being able to purchase it, protect it, we accomplish many things: recreation, agriculture, conservation. Those are those are the types of land purchases that usually garner a lot of state and federal grant support and local support.
Troy, with
Exactly.
that being-
And the other thing we didn't mention is cost of community services. Rockingham County and other counties have done studies of cost of community services, and of course, housing does not pay for itself, where open land is not costing you anything. That's another factor. And Troy's exactly right that we're not just making trails, we're trying to make big tracts of habitat property, and in addition, put a trail in that will not impact the wildlife.
So, Troy, to what you said, and I agree, but I think one thing that would be helpful is also knowing where these parcels of land that we're discussing are.
Well, I can get the old document that we did that prioritize, and then we'll have to update that.
And one thing that's not clear for me, I mean, Troy, you made a nice, presentation there, and you mentioned key agricultural land, right? Is that the same land that we're also talking about, or is that just, kind of aspirational in the future of what is in the charter of the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, I was just trying to point out that conservation will go after land that they're trying to protect, open space, wildlife habitat, wetlands, and if there's an opportunity that they can connect their land to abutting land and create that bigger tract and have trail systems like that. But I'm just saying there's another component which really I don't think is the conservation's role, and that is really taking a look at some of the land that we have in town that we all drive by every day and never, it's always too late when we find out that it's going to be developed and everyone's scrambling to try to save the, 60-acre cornfield. I guess that was, and I think it's a different component. Jay, I know, Jay, you've worked with a lot of communities where they probably have an open space preservation plan, and they identify the different types of land that the community's goal to protect. And I think that's what, before we were able to get some kind of commitment to the voters, they would need to have this, a plan that's well thought out, it's prioritized. And, typically there's no agreement with any of the landowners, but we're sort of showing general areas in town that we have interest in.
I think that's part of my
Right.
question is as far as knowing where this land is located, because I'm sure there's a portion of town that would like to preserve and like maintain what's there now. There's probably also a portion that's saying, hey, let's develop and bring in some more tax base.
Right.
And that's why knowing where that land is, I think, could be helpful as far as decision making.
I know that the planning board a while back, when we were doing the map for zoning, did a survey of the town. And what we found from a lot of different people who living in town is that they like the conservation piece or the conservation land. They like the quality of life, and I think they like the community being connected to that type of living. I think a lot of people who come to Litchfield come here because it's not Hudson, it's not Manchester. They come here because it is a community that has those resources. So I think that's something that you have to take into consideration when you're looking at this kind of thing. And also, the master plan of the town really focuses on the character of the community, which is really the agricultural piece is a big part of it. We do have farms in town. We do have farmland, and we have people who farm here. So that's one piece. Also, people take advantage of the conservation land. I mean, during this pandemic, I haven't seen, there were so many cars at Morris Falls now. It's just unbelievable how many people are taking advantage of the conservation lands. So this is something that I think is important. And I think that when we're thinking of this, you have to think of why do people come to Litchfield? And I think people come to Litchfield because they find that type of setting, the rural setting, the community, the conservation, the agriculture, they like that piece. So but I know we did a survey, and I think that was one of the things that they found in the survey was people wanted that. So.
And if I could just add something, because I know there's some members on this committee that they're getting involved for the very first time. And I don't want you to learn about something, 6 months down the road. But as we talked about earlier, one of the sole funding source right now for conservation is the land use change tax. And that program is, property owners that have large tracts of land can put their property in current use, meaning that, it's being preserved in the prime, virgin status that it's in. At some point, and in exchange for that, they get a reduction in their property taxes. It's pretty much the assessed value of it when it's in current use is minimal. So it allows the property owners to continue to own the land. At some point in time, when they sell it, there's a tax to take it out of current use, and that tax is 10% of the fair market value. The town currently right now, when we issue that tax, 80% of that tax money goes directly to the Conservation Commission, and it's under their control to manage those funds and expend them. The remaining 20% comes into the general fund as a revenue source. So I just wanted to give some background on that, but to make you all aware that currently the Conservation Land Fund, we have $630,000 in that fund. It's been growing quite a bit in the last few years. And I also learned today that it's possible that we have about another 100,000, 70 to 100,000 that could come in within the next year as well. However, some of those bills, the current use change taxes that we've issued, some of them, we think someone may file an abatement on them and disagree with the tax that we assess them. But it's just important. I asked Joan this today. I said, Joan, when you say you needed $2 million, the Conservation Commission wants $2 million to be included in the plan. Is that in addition to the current use funds that you already have? And she said yes. So I don't want anyone to find out later down the road that, we're looking for 2 million and there's already, 600, 700,000 in a fund for this purpose. So just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Joan, for coming in and providing some input. Yeah, if you can provide us with information about the properties in town, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I'll get the priority plan out and also check on the number of acres we already have and get back to you.
Okay. Very good.
Alrighty. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay. The next item is the fire CIP review. We have the fire chief with us this evening. Representative from the fire department.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you. Okay. Good evening. Mm-hmm.
Good evening. I'm not sure if the video's working, but we've got audio, so we're good there. So we have two projects for you in the next 5 years. The first one is the replacement of the 1991 tanker, which is a 2,500 gallon tanker with 1,500 gallon per minute pump. And that typically is our primary water source in the non-hydranted areas of town. So that truck, as of last month, that truck had 52,000 miles on it and 1,900 hours on the motor and pump. 52,000 is not much for a commercial truck like that, but keep in mind that truck runs constantly. When it starts, it stays running the entire time. And runs typically at any type of an incident as if it were running on the highway at high pump and motor speeds and so forth. So the proposal is to replace it with a similar type of vehicle, but not quite as much water because of all the added hydrants that we've had. So we'd be looking at probably somewhere closer to 1,800 gallons of water as opposed to 2,500. The vehicle's obviously 29 years old this year, and quite honestly is beyond its normal service life. It provides for seating for two and lacks many of the current safety standards and technology standards of apparatus of modern day. And one simple example is it has just simple lap belts for seat belts. And I know for many that was what we've known for most of our life, but in today's day and age, apparatus is built to withstand collisions and so forth, rollovers. They actually have new technology on particularly the tankers like this is rollover stabilization or rollover prevention technology, which when the vehicle gets to a certain cant or tilt, it cuts the motor down automatically, cuts the engine power down automatically so that the vehicle stabilizes. Couple of guiding things. The National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, generally categorizes an apparatus for 20 years. Obviously, in larger communities, they may only get 8 or 10 years out of them. Smaller communities get more. We've gotten 29 years out of this. It still certainly functions, but again, it needs to be considered for replacement in the not too distant future. And I would just also put out there, no matter what apparatus we're talking about, that from the time we actually place the order, it takes about 340 to 360 days to build and deliver that vehicle. So when we're talking about a truck that's presently 29 years old, assuming it went before the voter and passed in March, we would not see that vehicle till sometime late winter, early spring 2022, at which point the vehicle would be obviously 2 years older. We worked with the company that does our service presently, company out of Ossipee, New Hampshire, and they gave us the pricing, today's pricing for that a vehicle to replace the tanker of $662,000. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
Okay. Are there any questions so far for the chief?
Hey, Chief, this is Andrew Cutter. Thank you again for coming to present to the committee. Question for you on the number of streets and residences that are off the hydrant grid, right? I know with the St. Gobain issue, we brought in kind of the northern part of the town onto the water grid. How many, streets and residences are still out there that are not part of that grid?
I mean, rough numbers, certainly no hard data behind it, Andrew, is about 90% of town is now covered by hydrants. We still have some sections of Charles Bancroft that are outside the 500-foot distance of a fire hydrant. We have some cul-de-sacs that exceed that 500-foot distance, and generally speaking, the hydrants at the beginning of the cul-de-sac. And we have one or two other sections of roads that, there's just a gap between the hydrants, whether it was a system was put in at one point and another one came in from the opposite direction, like with CBH. There's the section from pretty much the fire station, library area up to Hillcrest, which has no hydrants. I had understood at one point that was going to be part of St. Gobain, but I have not seen anything recently that that project's moving forward. There's some sections down in the lower end, the smaller sections. So, and that was kind of the reason why we've cut the size of the vehicle back, is for a couple of things. One, we can put it on a smaller truck. We can put it on a single axle vehicle, rear axle, as opposed to a dual rear axle vehicle. Obviously that saves some money there. It's easier to maneuver. It is easier to work with. It would have a custom cab capable of holding five firefighters like the rest of our apparatus, as opposed to a commercial cab and chassis, which generally is two. Yeah, we have certainly increased our hydrant coverage significantly with St. Gobain, and that was taken into consideration with this proposal.
Thank you. That helps. That helps a lot. And maybe if you could also talk to the mutual aid, right? I know as a town we participate in a mutual aid agreement with towns neighboring us. Is there an opportunity to rely upon our mutual aid agreements in the event that we have a need for a tanker type situation that requires that apparatus to be on site?
So we do. We have mutual aid agreements with both of our mutual aid groups that we belong with, going as far to the west as New Ipswich and as far to the east as Auburn, Candia, that area, and then down a couple of communities into Massachusetts. We rely on mutual aid regularly for any type of a structural fire. We automatically, because we don't have a ladder, we automatically get a ladder out of Londonderry on any reported building fire. And depending upon which part of town, we get an engine from one of our either north or south communities. So generally speaking, in the south, we get an engine or a tanker out of Hudson. And if it's to the north, we get an engine out of Manchester or a tanker out of Bedford. So we already utilize mutual aid. So we do go quite a bit. That's probably the tanker is actually our most common mutual aid response to other communities. Londonderry recently, within the last couple of years, reacquired a tanker. They didn't have one for a number of years. But we actually already rely on mutual aid, so we can certainly get it. But at some point, we oversaturate. So if we were to pull a tanker and a ladder automatically and a tanker out of Londonderry, we've now, to a degree, stripped Londonderry of most of their on-duty staffing. So we actually set it up to draw just one or two trucks out of each community over a period of time to allow them to get, adequate staffing back in. So we can rely on mutual aid, but we shouldn't rely solely on mutual aid for a tanker. Well, we do for a ladder already, and I'm certainly not proposing we look at a ladder. I don't think we have a need for it in this community, but we do for some form of a tanker.
Got it. Thank you very much.
So, Chief, just a quick question as far as utilizing mutual aid. Do you know what the response time is for if you are requesting a tanker from, say, Londonderry, and you utilize our tanker? What the time span is, who gets there first, and how much time in between?
So a lot of variables play into that question.
Yeah.
Where it is in town. Obviously, if it's over on the Hillcrest, Pinecrest, Wiley Hill Road intersection, they're going to have a much quicker response. If they're coming, to the north end, I believe their tanker runs out of Londonderry's tanker runs out of their central station. So obviously, if it's going to the north end, it has to somehow go north or come across and come over, go north. So that plays into whether it arrives. Rarely do they arrive ahead of us during the day, obviously, because we staff at night. For the most part, we still are the first arriving, unless we're talking the Hudson or call with Hudson down on the 102 corridor. Then yeah, generally they will beat us there. But that's just pure graphics. I'm sorry, geography, not graphics, geography. Time-wise, again, with an address, we could plot it out, but it's really hard to say without where we're going in town and how you can get there.
So in terms of cost, how much do these? The tankers. What's the figure that we're looking at?
662. 662,000. And that's today's dollar, Mike. And I'm told to use about a 5 to 7% per year looking out, based on industry standards.
How would we? If the town wanted to acquire this piece of equipment, would it be a lease purchase, or how does that work?
I know Troy and I have had preliminary conversations. We'd probably be looking at, and certainly Steve or Troy can jump in, a 5 to 7 year lease purchase.
I would agree. I mean, typically that's what we've been doing for, large purchases like this. For a vehicle like this, my guess is the selectmen would be looking at pushing it out, more to the 7 to 8 year lease purchase.
Disadvantage to doing a
Hey, Chief.
lease purchase. I mean,
Okay.
you're purchasing this fire truck. It's probably like a 20-year, 25-year investment. Why would it be a lease purchase rather than just a straight out purchase?
Well, then it's just coming up with the funding. So, I mean, if the taxpayers could raise $662,000 in a warrant article, then you could, but you'd have to raise that 100% in one tax year. So typically that's why we look at just financing it just like you would your own personal vehicle. Other types of purchases like that, we just can't afford to purchase all at once.
Right. And out of curiosity, with a 7-8 year lease purchase, how much interest are we paying on a $662,000 vehicle? Can't be
I don't
small.
know, but it isn't going to be small. And I wouldn't want to guess right now, but yeah, you're going to be looking at, my guess, over 50,000.
I'm guessing too. All right. Is it possible to get a number, like if you were to do it like today?
Yeah, I definitely can. Yeah.
How much interest? All right.
Yeah, I could use the, I could get a couple of different scenarios for the committee just to take a look at and see.
And I can understand. I mean, the pain is much less if you're spreading over 8 years rather than asking for $700,000. But I'm curious how much more we have to pay to do that.
Right.
It's really the same conversation as the communication equipment that just passed warrant, right? That was 700,000, right?
Yeah.
Over what, 5, 6 years? And how much in interest are we paying on that? Right? It's really the same math.
Yeah. Not necessarily. It's a vehicle. I mean, every type of purchase you make has a different interest rate attached to it. So.
But I can get my the company I use that we just used for the radio tower project, and I'll have him put together a couple scenarios for us, so the committee can take a look at, what's an 8-year lease purchase versus 10-year, and just see the difference what the interest payment is over the term of the loan, but also looking at what do you think is affordable for the community when you're looking at all of this capital that you're trying to plan.
And what are we planning on doing with the existing tanker? Is that going to be sold? I mean, what's going to happen with that?
So that would either be traded in towards the offset the cost of the new vehicle or sold at auction, according to the town's surplus equipment policy. But
do we know what the estimated value of that trade-in or sale would be?
I don't, but it's certainly not going to fetch 100,000 by any stretch. If I had to guess, we'd be somewhere 30 or 50 if we were lucky, 1,000 if we're lucky.
Okay.
Just based on trade-ins I've had learned of in conversations with other chiefs over the past couple of years. There is not a high resale value for 30-year-old fire trucks.
Right.
Because basically they have to turn around.
Anything's better than nothing there, right?
True. Yeah, that's true. But keep in mind, they have to turn around and bring it up to current standards before they can resell it. So it's not like a used car. They can just put it on the lot and let it, run it through the shop and resell it. They have to sell it, to meet standards. So, and the only thing, just going back to the discussion about the longevity of the lease purchase and so forth. So a number of years ago, prior to my arrival here, the town had for their fire apparatus an ongoing plan, pretty much every 5 to 7 years replacing a vehicle, because we do have 5 pieces of larger apparatus that run this price range. The next one we're going to talk about is only a few years younger. So that is where I guess essentially we're way behind in our replacement program. So we're going to need to speed that up a little bit in order to not just keep kicking the can down the road and ultimately have 3 and 4 trucks that need to be replaced all around the same time. So I would just kind of give you that information to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're thinking about the costs and everything. Ideally, obviously, if we were on a 5-year plan, we'd be pretty good for a truck every 5 years and keeping them to a 20 to 25 year excuse me cycle. But right now we're at 30 years with this one. Engine 2 is 25 years old. And then we drop into at least the mid 2000s, early 2000s for the next engine 4. I believe it's a 2001 off the top of my head. And then there's engine 1 and the rescue. So the last vehicle that we purchased, again, prior to my arrival here, was the rescue, which was bought used from Londonderry. And as I understand it, and Troy or Steve, if you're more familiar, please chime in. That was bought with what was at one point in time capital reserve funds. And that was pretty much the end of the capital reserve fund program or account for apparatus, going back probably 10 or 12 years ago now. So the tanker's overdue. It's been discussed a number of times. The biggest challenge and the reason we have not brought the tanker forward previously, because a new tanker would not fit in the old fire station. So there was no sense to spend the extra money to make one short and long to fit in that building, because then something else would have to be moved outside. So we've kind of rebuilt the pump. We've done a lot of bigger repair jobs to it to buy us some time until we're in a facility that could house a new vehicle, new tanker, because they are a little bigger, obviously. So
Chief, with the only 10% of the town now needing a tanker, is there a pre-owned market out there that we can go get like a 2-year-old one?
Not two. You're probably looking at a 10 or a 15-year-old truck. It's very rare to find something that new.
But that's why you're already starting to get the hours on the pump and breakdown and so forth.
I won't say it doesn't happen. I mean, every now and again, there's a deal out there, whether it's a smaller fire district or fire company that, goes out of business. Believe it or not, that happens. And you can find one, but you're probably looking at something at least 10 to 15 years old. So, and if I can segue into the next truck a little bit, but one of the things we are looking at and exploring, and I certainly don't want to, give you any sort of commitment just yet because it's too early in the stage, but actually this vehicle replacing the tanker as well as the engine that is next on my proposal. Part of the reason we went more water than a standard engine, but we're working with the Insurance Service Office, or ISO, to make sure we don't compromise our insurance rating and make sure that we don't lose credit, anywhere, or we can still maintain adequate fire protection with 3 vehicles instead of the 4 larger vehicles. So there is a possibility when this vehicle is proposed, whether it's next March or if we push it out one more year, that this could be a 2-for-1 deal. But at this point in time, I want to be right up front and put, as we currently are running, out there, because that could be the way we have to stay. So
Chief, just a question for clarification, because I don't know, and I'm not sure if other people on this committee know. So when you call for mutual aid, do they charge the town?
No. Part of our mutual aid agreement with every community is we help each other out. And the only time we would bill another community, Brian, is if it involved hazardous materials. And that is because by state law, that community can bill the responsible party and recoup the costs. So quite honestly, if we don't bill, we're losing out on the opportunity to recoup the costs. And the other town is not going to pay.
Yeah. The reason I was asking is that if you're only going to get $30,000 to $50,000 for the vehicle, would it be worthwhile to hang on to it as a second one if we're being charged for help, but we're not. So got it. Thank you.
So that's all I have on the tanker. If there's no more
Okay.
questions, I'll move on to Mike, if it's okay to move on to engine 2.
Anybody have any further questions for the chief before we move on?
Yeah, Chief, I have a question. This is Sean. I'm a citizen rep on the committee.
Okay.
I don't know I don't know all the apparatus that you own in it, but this tanker, and if there's a need for it, is that beneficial in a non-residential fire? Like we just talking about all these tracts of land we have in the farmland. So forest fire, crop fires.
Yep. So yes, so that is a very good point. It is used quite a bit for brush in town as well as out of town. It has gone mutually to other communities to be a water source for mostly brush or woodland fires. So.
All right, thank you.
Does, Chief, just on that point, does the forestry unit that was recently acquired in the past year or so, that also has a tank on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is a 1,000-gallon tank on it, and that's actually in Hudson now on its maiden call. It's down there. They have a fairly good-sized brush fire going underneath some power lines, so it pretty much it's gone down with a crew to supply water to their forestries.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess we'll move on to the next topic then, Chief.
All right. So let me change screens here. So project number 2 is the replacement of the engine 2, the 1995 fire engine, currently 25 years old, has 66,000 miles and 4,000 engine and pump hours. That pump was rebuilt, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago now. Again, it's just we've got to develop a plan to keep our apparatus current and reliable. We have had some transmission issues with this vehicle, and we get them taken care of, and it seems like you fix one thing, it's something else. But that is the next vehicle. It would be replaced with a like vehicle, 1,000 gallons of water, 2,000 capacity pump, and then again on a 5 to 6 person cabin chassis, custom, with all the current safety features and load distribution, vehicle data control systems, vehicle stability systems, rollover stability. That vehicle runs a little less because it is a little bit smaller and carries less water. Today's cost would be $623,600 on that vehicle. And again, we have to keep in mind 5 to 7% annual inflation on these vehicles. So, if that's 3 to 5 years out, do the math, but you're looking at, pushing 7 anyway. And again, this is just the next 5 years. There are still 2 additional engines beyond this that are not, on the current 5-year CIP.
So, Chief, as this truck has a pump on it as well, plus the forestry unit that also has a pump, going back, I guess, to the first apparatus, do we really need as a community a separate dedicated pump truck, knowing that our other engines also have the capacity to have water on them?
So this would be an engine, and yeah, I do, Andrew. This would, okay. So I refer to it as a pumper, but it's considered a structural engine. So it would have a large capacity pump on it and 1,000 gallons of water. Typically in a city or a more urban area, the trucks carry 500 gallons of water because hydrants are much closer. Typically in a community like Litchfield, a little more rural, we run a minimum of 1,000 gallons. So this current truck has 1,000 gallons. The replacement would be 1,000 gallons. The forestry is 1,000 gallons. It's not considered a structural response vehicle. The pump on it is only a 200, I believe it is, gallon per 100 gallon, 125 gallon per minute pump. So it's two different concepts, two different, how do I want to describe? Basically, they have two different roles. So we would not use the forestry tanker on a structural call because it's not set up to dump water quickly. It doesn't have what are considered dump valves, so a 10 or 12 inch discharge on it that can dump into a portable tank that we would set up. So it's really not designed for use in a structural setting. There's no way to get the water off it quick enough to be useful. The forestry, that is. So the engines are all set up to pump large capacities, take in large capacities. The tanker is set up to do the same thing, as well as it carries a porta tank or basically a 1,500 gallon pond we can set up in a driveway or in a street, and dump that truckload in 2 to 3 minutes through a 10 or 12 inch dump valve.
Got it.
So that's a tanker, and then the engine basically is designed to pump. Modern day engines are no less than 1,500 gallons. Most of them coming through now are a 2,000 gallon per minute pump. So in by ISO requirements, we're supposed to be able to pump 3,500 gallons of water a minute with our apparatus. So that's one of the rating categories that they have, is the ability to pump 3,500 gallons a minute. So if you figure 3 trucks at 1,500 gives you just over that. 2 trucks at 1,500, you're just under it. So, and again, that goes into kind of the factor with a newer, bigger pump. Do we not need that 4th vehicle? So, and ISO also requires reserve apparatus. So you have to have so many engines to meet your need, and you're supposed to have a reserve. So with the 4, we basically have had our 3 primary and 1 reserve, and the tanker has served a dual role, being able to pump large capacities. So it kind of covers as a pumper and a tanker, or an engine and a tanker. And I probably just confused all of you, and I apologize.
Yeah, I guess my simple mind is, if this truck carries water, this truck carries water, why can't we just, use one truck to carry water?
Because when you put a 70,000 pound Mack out in the woods, usually it's very hard to get it back out. Forestry's all-wheel.
Oh, you also answered it with the volume and the pumping pressure, right, and making sure that you have adequate coverage based on the pump itself. That was helpful.
On a typical single-family home, we probably are flowing 1,500 to 2,000 gallons of water a minute, total aggregate, from multiple trucks. On a forest fire, you may be flowing 500 gallons a minute from multiple trucks. So it's capacity and fire flow is based on the fire demand. So obviously a structural fire has a much smaller, higher BTU release, meaning it needs more water, where a brush fire tends to be more spread out and needs smaller amount of water, but in a wider area.
Yep.
So they truly
something
are.
else to point out, Andrew, is this truck will dump its load in about 90 seconds of its onboard water supply if it's running multiple attack lines. That's why they need multiple pumps to run shuttles and everything else. I know you were trying to explain that, Chief. I'm just clarifying.
Yep, no, I thank you. You're right on the money.
Okay. In terms of, I know at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about sort of spacing out the timeline for when to replace these vehicles. Can you sort of give an idea of what that would be for if you needed to change from one engine or one tanker to another?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Mike.
I'm sorry, not trying to confuse you. So I guess you said that you're you were going to change, you're going to have to, the next time around, you're going to try to go from one vehicle to another vehicle. And I just was curious what the, how long the lifespan of the vehicle, what are you looking at in terms of, is it going to be 5 to 7 years? Is it going to be, 3 to 4 years that you change vehicles? I'm just curious.
So, we had put a vehicle on the warrant last year, and after working with the board, chose to pull it back because this was some of the things that we hadn't completely vetted out yet. But we need to keep moving forward by replacing the tanker first. It will, if we can, we've got to replace that truck with a vehicle that has more than 1,000 gallons of water, just because we don't have 100% coverage and a hydrant within 500 or so feet of every home. So by replacing the tanker with not quite as big, but bigger than the standard 1,000-gallon engine, it's going to give us, one, if we can do it, if everything works out through our research and through our data checking and fact checking works out that we can do it and we can afford to reduce the fleet, we would basically, after a year or so of trying it, we would then come back and say we don't need to replace engine 2, we've already done it. But if for whatever reason it didn't work, then we would move forward with the engine 2 replacement. But either way, the tanker does need to be replaced with another pumper tanker, just instead of carrying a full, being a tandem axle rear end. I'm comfortable now with the hydrant capabilities and capacity that we have to drop it down and be able to go to a smaller pumper tanker.
So the lifespan for these vehicles, because I know, one was what, was it 25 years or something?
So the tanker is 29 years old currently, and the engine 2 is 25.
So
So
is
I would anticipate a similar lifespan with, and again,
I guess that's my question.
yeah, and
Sorry.
again, sorry for the long answer. But
Yeah,
again,
I know.
it's assuming that it sees, the same amount of use and obviously if the town were to expand rapidly and have an increase in use, then that could be a little less. I'm not going to knock any manufacturer, but I don't think anything in this day and age is built the way it was 30 years ago. But I would safely say 20 years on the life expectancy of this new vehicle.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else for the chief on this subject? Troy or Jay, did you want to add anything to the discussion?
This is Jay. I'm good. I thought those are good explanations.
Okay.
So I just got one quick question for the chief, because I know you said it's like a thought right now. If you were to look for a combined vehicle, what's the cost for one of those?
So that would be the first one I proposed, Brian. So it would be the tanker replacement would be that vehicle.
Okay. No, but I thought you mentioned that you were looking at a vehicle that was dual purpose.
That would be the new tanker. The new tanker for 662.
Yeah.
Would have the ability to do that, fill that role.
I got it. Thank you.
Troy here. I was just going to follow up. Andrew Cutter had made a good point to take a look at the radio lease purchase that we just finalized and entered into. So if you wanted to get a kind of an understanding of what the payments would be, we entered into a 5-year lease purchase in the amount of $700,000. We got an interest rate of 2.55%. So the annual payments are $151,000 a year, and over the 5-year lease term, we'll pay $55,000 in interest costs.
Thanks,
Mike-
Roy. So assuming, vehicle loans are being a little bit higher percentage, right? I would assume that this would be a little bit higher as well. And you're probably in the same ballpark though, right? Because, it's not 700 grand, it's 660 grand, so that offsets it. So I would say you're somewhere in the 50 to 55,000 interest over 5 years.
Yeah.
I agree.
Do we get a discount if we buy two?
We might be able to work something out.
Well, I mean, if we're ordering two pieces of equipment, I was just wondering, what the timing was, and if you'd preload it and say, hey, we're buying this now, 2 years when they do another one, some kind of, close sale discount or anything like that.
I do know of a few communities, mostly larger cities, that have bought, 2 or 3 at a time, and they do tend to get a better deal. I would have to, before I said yes, absolutely, I'd certainly want to vet out a couple of manufacturers to see if there would be some kind of but again, great idea, and certainly, I'd be crazy not to support it. But just keep in mind that you're going to have 2 trucks that are the same age 20 years from now, and be
Right.
back having to replace them at the same time. That's why getting into a cycle kind of just keeps it constant. There's no peaks and valleys.
Sure.
But to go along
I
with
do have one last question.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. What about all the onboard equipment that's on the current equipment? Is that all transferable? All the brackets, all the mounts, all the fittings, everything else? Is that going to be used, or we have to replace any of that with the new equipment as well?
The majority of the equipment would be moved over. Obviously, some of the hose might be a slightly different size, but for the most part, the majority of the equipment, air packs, portable radios, stuff like that, would be moved over. Hand tools, hose, most of it, would be moved over.
And all the additional stuff that will not be moved over, is that part of the estimate here? Is this just the vehicle? Is that lettering? Is it, putting the brackets in for the seats? I mean, for the air bottles and everything else? I mean, is there anything additional?
So this is an estimate. Once we move forward, we would actually do a bid process. So we would take a design specification that fits our needs. We would put it out to bid, and that would be all part of the bid. So basically, when the truck shows up, short of moving our air packs and our hand tools and so forth onto it, the truck would essentially be ready to go in service.
Be ready to roll.
Once staff is trained on it.
Okay. Is there any additional bells and whistles that you're looking at that might change the cost?
No, again, this is
protections and other things. Is it standard equipment, or is those, I assume it's like buying a car. You can fluff it up as much as you want, or.
Yep. You can buy the little smart car, or you can buy the.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or you get a pickup truck and you get the base model, or you get the super high end version.
Yep. So this is an average run of the mill standard. I won't call it the stripped down version. The vehicle has to meet certain standards for safety, technology, and so forth. So some of it doesn't matter what, how many extra bells and whistles. It's the base package. You cannot buy it without. Again,
Gotcha.
for the rollover stability is not an option. We cannot opt out of that to save money.
Okay.
They can't sell the truck without it by standard. So this, I haven't gone through the spec with a fine tooth comb. I asked the vendor to just kind of give me a generic pumper tanker and a generic engine or spec. That's what they've given us. So, it could fluctuate a little way either side once we were to decide what we really need to fit our needs specifically.
Gotcha.
You know, but it would
What about
include,
regional?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it would
That's what I figured.
include 99% of, you know, what we truly need with that small stuff being moved over.
What about like chains, automatic chains, or anything like that? Is that part of the package, or is that something you got to add on?
That would be part of the package. I would assume it's in here because that's pretty much, while not required, it is pretty much industry standard. I don't know of anybody not, in this part of the country anyway, not ordering the on-spot automatic chains.
Gotcha. Okay. Just curious, because you know, I go to the car dealer, I buy a car, and they're trying to upsell me all kinds of stuff. I just want to make sure there's no surprises.
And that's why, and that's kind of why we put a committee together to vet all this stuff out. And, you know, obviously the committee may want, you know, a few more things than we can afford, and we have to cut some areas, but, you know, it would be based on, and that would be a priority, is the on-spot chains. And when I say on-spot, they're automatic. You press a button, it engages a cam that starts spinning chains for underneath the apparatus, so you don't have to put a conventional set of chains on, as opposed to
I've done that.
down
That's
the
not
road.
fun. That's not fun for anyone, or convenient for our region.
Right.
Cool. Thank you.
And I guess this goes to the question we talked about, you know, what would happen to the old tanker? I guess with the engine, what would happen to that vehicle if we?
So if assuming we replaced it in kind, Mike, it'd be traded in. If for whatever reason we end up not replacing it and doing the 2-for-1 deal or 1-for-2 deal, then it would just go to, I would assume, either the town could do an auction on its own, or we could send it to the state auction to recoup the cost.
Any idea how much we would get back?
Yeah, probably even less than a trade-in.
Okay.
There's not, again, a high commodity for, maybe a campground might buy it. I've seen that happen before.
Troy, I'm just curious, and I don't know if the chief knows this as well, but in terms of funding sources, is there any, I mean, do we have anything in the town budget in terms of, you know, reserve funds for this type of purchase, these types of equipment?
No, I'm not aware of a capital reserve fund we have for fire engine replacement. We have a capital reserve fund that for doing repairs to the fire engines, but there's not. I don't know. I think there's less than $50,000 in that fund.
Any grants or anything from the state to help offset the cost?
There hasn't been in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Okay, so any more questions for the Chief Fretzel? Okay. Well, is that your presentation, Chief? Or you have anything else you want?
That is the two we have for this 5-year period.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Or if the committee has any further questions, we can reach out to you, and
absolutely.
We appreciate your input.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, take care.
Okay. Moving on. The next item on the agenda is police CIP review. Is Chief Sergeant on the on the call?
Again, good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. So I'll obviously let you give your presentation.
Well, thank you, sir. Good evening to all the members of the committee. Good evening, Town Administrator Brown. Thank you for your time and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this matter. When I first presented to the Capital Improvement Committee, I came to you with many concerns about the current existing facility where we are as half of the town hall building. I highlighted for you a history of concerns from Chief Iverson, Chief O'Brien, and leading into my presentation to you that the facility was just not adequate for us for how the department has grown. And I identified 3 major problems, and I would like to repeat them to you. Safety concerns, space constraints, storage restrictions. The only item that I submitted to the Capital Improvement Committee was a new police facility. That is the biggest thing that needs to be addressed with our police department. With the information that I had, and I would remind you that in January of 2018, a company called Casablues Associates conducted a space needs and assessment for our police department. And upon going through all the information that was provided to them, touring the facility, looking at the previous MRI study from 2008, it was concluded that a 12,600 square foot building would be appropriate to meet the needs of the department and the community. The floor plan that they prepared for Chief O'Brien at that time was a standalone building. As many of you remember, as we spoke, it was clear that there had been talk about adding on to the fire station and what has commonly been referred to as a phase 2. I was unaware of how involved this process was researched in the preparation that had been done to see this happen at some point in the future. So when we concluded our meeting, spoke with the fire chief, spoke with the deputy fire chief, I spoke with the town administrator, I spoke with IT Director John Burnell, but more talking to him about his experience as a selectman during the construction of the fire department. And everyone felt that reaching out to Ekman Construction, the company who built the fire department, would serve as a great resource to me. And boy, did it ever. I can't speak highly enough about this company and the time that they have spent with me, the information that they have provided for me to propose something very different to this committee. So again, following the presentation, I reached out to Ekman Construction. And in speaking with them, they were able to provide me with a civil drawing by Warren Street, whom I believe is the architect who designed the fire department. And this document laid out phase 2 of the fire department. And this phase would be attaching a police department to the new fire station. The civil drawing that I reviewed included a police station that was attached to the east side of the fire station, or if you consider it would be built out towards the town hall police department building. I also received information that the site work was prepped and prepared for this phase 2 to take place, that the sewer was constructed in a manner to be able to take on phase 2, the police department being added to the fire department. When I received these civil drawings, I felt it was important to reach out to Casablues Associates. Again, that's the company who conducted our space needs assessment. And I wanted to provide them with the drawing I had, the site plans, and put them in contact with Ekman Construction to see if the research that we had already done, if the building that we had already designed could go to this phase 2 location. The goal was to determine if we could meet our current needs and build a police department that is sufficient enough for the build out of the town. I worked with Mr. McKeon, who worked diligently with Ekman Construction. Mr. McKeon is one of the owners of Casablues Associates, and he's also an architect. And they determined that building off of the fire station would be effective while also reducing costs from a standalone police department. It is based on this new information, this research, the opinion of Ekman Construction, the opinion of Mr. McKeon from Casablues Associates, that have drawn me to propose to this capital improvement committee that the town move forward with phase 2 and build a new police department off of the east side of the fire station. This building that I would propose to the committee would be a 10,400 square feet building with an approximate cost at $6 million. And with more research and learning more about the current permits that we have with the state, if the town were to waive certain permits, if there was to be assistance with site work construction, I think we could see that number be reduced even more. I wanted to share with the committee a few different documents and to give a little perspective to what this would look like. And so one of the ones that I shared with you was the perspective of what an attached police department would look like to the current standing fire station. And the view would almost be from standing on Albuquerque Ave at Liberty Way and looking, and I hope everyone got it. It shows a color. You have the red for the fire department, the blue for the police department, to give you a perspective of what this building would look like in the space it's already allocated for. I felt utilizing Ekman and Casablues kept to the character of what this community felt best represented us in terms of the layout, the building design, and I thought it added on very nicely to our current fire station. I also shared with you an elevations document so that you could get an idea as to how the building would look from standing to the rear to different sides, and how it would compare and how the roof lines go together. I thought that was important to share with you. Again, to get a true perspective as to what this project would look like. I also shared with you the floor plan, and you can see how the floor plan of the police department would attach to the current fire department through a simple hallway. The access to the fire department would be through the existing kitchen, pantry, storage closet. That storage will be a hallway that will lead to the department, and a wall would be added to separate the dining area. That storage pantry would be relocated to a current vestibule, and what would happen is the exterior door would be removed, there would be siding, and you wouldn't have to worry about a second means of egress because it's not needed, because the occupants are able to egress through the fire station, through the police station main lobby in the event of an emergency. Another important thing is that the connection would provide easy access to the shared emergency operations center. Some of you might be questioning why you were first presented with a 12,000 plus square foot building that I spoke to and said, this meets our needs in the build out and the needs of the citizens. The new floor plan removes an emergency operations center that was in the standalone building. So that was over 1,100 square feet to be removed. Another reduction in square footage was from a fitness room. Initially, the standalone building had almost 1,000 square feet of space. this would be down to a little over 500 to be shared with fire department personnel or town employees. Finally, the last one I felt really important to share, and Preston Hunter from Ekman Construction walked me through this to show the historical construction costs over the past 10 years. So we prepared some information for you, a chart that if we went with Ekman's Construction's construction cost, only the construction cost to build phase 2 would be $3,987,000. We then went 10 years back, and to show that 10 years ago, this same building, the construction cost would be $2,629,000. And I think what's important to, as we look at how construction costs go up year after year after year, I would ask you to remember this one thing. The need of the police departments, they will not go away. But historically, the cost will increase. So as you consider the timing in the next 5 years, I would just ask you to consider that our needs are not going away. Our safety concerns, our space constraints, our storage restrictions are going to remain present. And I thank you, board members, for allowing me to present that to you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Does anybody have any questions for the chief?
So, Chief, thank you again. This is Andrew Cutter. Appreciate you coming back to the committee and presenting the updated plans. Obviously, it's welcoming to have such a reduction, right? We went from 10 million approximately down to 6, which is a great start. What I'm trying to do is just balance the estimated $6 million cost versus the 3.9 million that was on that spreadsheet in construction costs. What's the difference of the 2 million, please?
Yes, sir. So again, your construction costs are just your hard construction costs. The other cost would be your furnishing, your security system, your data allowance, your communication equipment, approximately $750,000 for all of those. I spent some time with IT Director John Burnell, and we reviewed what would be allowance that would be allocated for that type of building, and he felt that was a good cost. You then have your owner's indirect cost, which would include everywhere from your land survey, your architectural and engineering fees, your utility back charges, legal and advertising, material testing, owner's contingencies. And the reason I didn't submit an opinion of probable cost for you this time is because I was working with Ekman, and they felt they could build the facility for just under $4 million. I had another company who was just shy of $6 million, just only on the construction hard cost. And when I sat down with Preston Hunter, we felt that all of your other furnishings, all of your engineering and architectural costs, and the site work costs, that's where you come up with the other approximately $2 million more.
Thank you.
I know, and I think I forgot to ask this question last time. And in terms of sources of funding, I know what we talked about. Are there any grants or anything out there that would help to alleviate any costs or for this project that you can think of? Or
Not
is
at
there
this time.
Okay.
Not at this time, and I can assure you that we are committed to utilizing any grant for this project or moving forward as a department. Not to get off topic here, but we've recently been awarded 2 separate $6,000 grants to provide equipment to our officers that we would have asked the taxpayers for. We currently have another grant before the state right now, looking to receive $62,000 worth of radio equipment. And I share that with you because one of the things that I would like to do as your chief, working with Captain Scotty, working with our police officers, is to take advantage of these grants and to constantly research and to find these and go for those. So at this time, there is nothing available, but I commit to you that we are continuing to research and looking to identify available grants that could help move this project forward and take the hit off of the taxpayer, our citizens.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have anything that they want to ask?
Yeah, Chief, just real quick. This is for, obviously, your number one priority. Is this for year 2021 warrant?
Mr. Burke, that is something that I would truly have a long discussion with our Board of Selectmen. I understand, given the times that we're in and concerns about what type of revenues will be coming into the town, that 2021 could be very challenging. And I would never want to put hardship on our citizens, on the town, and whatnot. I certainly think sooner is better. Like I spoke to, the problems and needs that we have are not going to go away. But if the committee and the Board of Selectmen didn't feel it was the right time to move forward, it's not. Because again, like I talked, we need to create buy-in. It starts with this committee, the Board of Selectmen, the Budget Committee, but ultimately our citizens. And I believe I can justify the need for it now, and I would go for it now if everyone felt comfortable with it. So would I like to see this as soon as possible? Absolutely. But I think that's something that we would have to discuss further, either with this committee, the selectmen, and or the Budget Committee. I would speak to, and again, this might come up later, is the use of the space that we are in now. Could that resolve an issue? Could that save money to the town by utilizing that space for some other entity? So I think that should also be considered, is what department, what part of the town could benefit from the 3,000 square feet that the police department currently has. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chief, you feel that, I mean, I know you went into great detail last time about the safety concerns, about space constraint, I know storage restrictions, especially with evidence and so forth. You feel comfortable that by moving into this new building, you're going to be able to meet those needs? I would imagine you feel comfortable stating that?
Yes, sir, I absolutely do, Mr. Chairman.
Troy, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I think Chief Sargent's done a great job reaching out to Ekman Construction, Casablues, who's did some of the preliminary engineering, architectural design back when Chief O'Brien first started this effort. I think you've got yourself a really good conceptual layout. I think we know that the footprint will fit as we originally planned to have the construction of a safety center. And that's really, I mean, I think that's fantastic news. A lot of times I've seen communities, they start these projects as phase 1 and phase 2, and something goes wrong in phase 2, and you learn that a parking lot was built where it shouldn't have been, or electric conduit, a sewer line, something went right where the safety, the police station was supposed to be built. So Ekman and Warren Street, they did a fantastic job in making sure that this would be painless to pursue phase 2, which would be the police station. So you would have a safety center here in Litchfield one day in the center of our community.
Okay, thank you, Troy.
One other question, if I may. As I'm going through these plans, and this is Andrew Cutter again. As I'm going through these plans, right, I note that there's several different meeting rooms and conference spaces and a fitness center. Just again, playing devil's advocate, are these spaces truly needed in today's police station?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cutter. Excellent question. So I think when we look at the fitness area, we're looking at approximately 500 square feet. Officers who are hired after 2001 are required to take a 3-year physical fitness test in order to maintain their certification. Certainly, I expect our officers to maintain their fitness and to be able to provide them, our firefighters, and other town employees, if that's how the town saw fit, with a place to be able to work out and have a cost savings. I think it is necessary for that, and we did reduce that significantly. The conference room in the administration wing is absolutely important because of the sensitive nature of topics that need to take place there. That's a nice out of the public type of location where individuals, representatives from our federal, state, or other local law enforcement agencies can come, and we have the secure place out of sight, out of hearing from the town, and sometimes these sensitive issues need to be kept at the level of the administration and not known to the entire department. So that conference area is absolutely necessary. It also provides for the prosecutor to have an opportunity to meet with victims, family of victims, witness advocates. So that's why I would justify that. The meeting room is interesting because we cut out the emergency operations center because we do have access to that. That room, essentially, as you think about it, squares off the building. Now, why would it be necessary? Because it would allow us or the fire department to hold trainings. A lot of times when we're not able to do this now. If the emergency operations center room was able to open up, if the police department were to sponsor a training, it's common that your officers would get to attend the training conference or class for free. So you could save $300 to $500 per officer who's attending. I know the fire department has utilized the EOC as a community room. This could be utilized at that. It also allows for more, in the event that the EOC was open and we needed that space, but the community still required some other space, it's open to them too. So I do understand, and I hear your question there. I do think it serves for less sensitive operations that we're going to conduct, such as if we were going to do a high-risk search warrant, if we were going to conduct an arrest warrant, and we were going to have an operations plan, to have that space, that open space where we could have 15, 20 officers present to run through the briefing to distribute the appropriate material, and then to come back and debrief. I think that's very important. So I think it is a great question. I think they are justified spaces. It's certainly something I'm happy to go back and continue to reevaluate and reassess.
No, I appreciate that, Ray. You have to ask the questions. Do we currently have a fitness center today, or is this a new facility that would serve both the department as well as the fire department, as it's currently not provided as a service today, or as an option today, I should say?
Yeah, no, this would be an addition. There's currently no fitness room or area for the fire department unless they've done something that I'm unaware of, and for the police department.
Thank you.
I will
Final
say,
question. Go ahead.
I will say that a local business owner was kind enough to put a couple pieces of equipment and allow officers to access their business at all hours to utilize some training. But then they were more than happy to do it. I just think that we have a little more accountability having our employees on the town property as opposed to in a private business.
And that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you to the business owner who did that as well. Final question, then I'll turn it over to the others in the committee. You know, I'm just kind of an astute eye here, right? I'm looking at the floor plan that was provided and looking at the area above the fitness center, and I note the walls appear to be different, like almost like a cinder block they look like on the diagram. Is that intentional? What's the difference between that particular area and the rest of the building?
So if you're looking down at the fitness center, you'll notice that it shares a wall with the prisoner booking area.
Yeah.
So that needs to be a cinder block wall for security. So that is why you would have the cinder block there for the exterior walls or adjoining walls for security. And then as you see, if you go down to the vestibule, you'll see it's just your standardized construction.
I see. So that is, in fact, that thicker wall that I'm seeing on this diagram is, in fact, cinder block for that particular reason. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Good eye.
Okay. Just curious, Troy, I'm curious, maybe the chief knows as well. Going back to sources of funding again, and I guess I'll ask the same question. Do we have any funds available in our, whether it's a capital reserve fund or anything like that, that may help to offset any costs for this type of project?
Nothing significant. We have our impact fees that we collect, and we've been using those funds. I know Chief O'Brien accessed those funds to do some of the preliminary architectural work. So I think right now, you know, those funds, as you start moving towards refining plans and getting, you know, really good solid estimates, typically, like we saw the fire station, we'd use those impact fee funds to assist in that you know, that effort to finalize numbers and get things out to bid for cost estimating and design work, final design work. But I think Ben, you might know if you've asked recently, Karen. I want to say that the impact fee is somewhere around 30,000 right now for police.
My estimate, Mr. Brown, was going to be between 25 and 30,000.
Yeah. So it would be used for A&E, preliminary A&E services, architectural engineering services. That's the only thing we have for funds currently with the town.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else they want to? Jay, do you have anything? I don't want to keep you out of the loop.
Oh, I think it was a very good presentation, very thorough, and I really appreciate the follow up that's happened since the last time we met.
No, I think I think this was very well thought out. I would agree. I think it's very good presentation. I think it shows that a lot of thought went into this process and how to make it perhaps, less costly, but also being able to meet the needs that you addressed in your last presentation. So I give you credit for that. That was very well done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Chief, that you wanted to add to your presentation this evening?
Certainly, I would just share with all the committee members, if anyone has any other questions or concerns, please at any time give me a call, send me an email. If you have an idea that you think can help me do better or present this better, and I'm open. So again, thank you for your time, and that would conclude my presentation if there were no more questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being on the call with us this evening. We appreciate your input, and we think this is. I think you've done a good job of doing looking into this issue and trying to make it work. So I appreciate that, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, Chief. Be well.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Next item on the agenda. There is a bullet point 5 that says other. Troy, is there anything else that we need to address?
No, I put that there as a placeholder and for anything else that might come up.
Okay. All right. So I guess at this time, I mean, we can move to talk about our discussion from stepping off point from last time, which was if it's decided that a new police station is going to be built, if it's decided that a new school, Griffin Memorial School, is going to move, we have two, existing buildings that are going to have space, and what are we going to do with that space? And I think this is where the discussion comes from. What do we want to see as a committee? What we want to do with that space? I know there were a lot of issues with Griffin Memorial in terms of the floodplain, and there was asbestos problems. I know what Dr. Jetty mentioned some of the problems with space and so forth. The idea, I think one of the ideas that came up was this could be a possible site for a future community center or an SAU. I guess I'll start the discussion. What is the board? What's your feeling? What would you like to see take place in terms of the police station? If the police station moves, you have that space. What are we going to do with that space? I've heard people say SAU office. Is this something that you folks are, do you envision as happening?
Go ahead, Steve. I think you have a comment.
So, Sir Chairman, if I can just I thought after the last meeting, we said that we'd probably have a separate conversation about this because it's going to be quite a bit of input. And in the interest of time right now, we're approaching 8 o'clock. I think this is a conversation we can probably go on for a while.
Right.
And I thought this was going to be a separate meeting that we get together and maybe throw ideas out there. I could be wrong, but I thought that was the consensus.
Well, maybe, I thought we were going to discuss some of what the possibilities were for these facilities. That was my idea, my understanding, but maybe I was mistaken. How does the board or the committee feel about, do you want to discuss this tonight? Is this something that you want to put to another agenda? Due to the, it is almost 8 o'clock this evening. We did get a lot of information in with the other presentations. It's up
Mike,
to you
I think
guys.
it might be an agenda on its own because this could go on for a while. You were right that that was going to be the topic, I believe, for this evening, but I think we were able to get enough other committees ready to present their plans that it kind of filled up the majority of the time. And I think a lot of people sitting on this committee probably have a lot of thoughts of what to do with those other buildings.
Mhm.
So my personal opinion would be, I think we should push it to an agenda of its own if we do have time, even if it's an off cycle of a Monday night.
Okay. All right. That's perfectly fine with me, if it's fine with everybody else. So what are we looking for in terms of another date to meet? What's everybody's availability for Monday? Did you want to?
Would it be Monday the 22nd or the 29th? What are we looking at?
Well, I don't know if you want to post it off a week and then do it on the 29th, or if you want to do it next week. I have no preference.
The Board of Selectmen are meeting on Monday, the 22nd.
Okay,
Right.
so that's probably out, most definitely. But so the 29th, would that be something that people could do?
Yep.
I'm
Works for
available.
me.
I'm free.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So what I think we'll do tonight is we will push off the discussion about the school, about the police department to next time, to the 29th of June. And we'll have a conversation about those issues. I do want to get public input in. Are there any members of the public out there who are listening or have joined this conversation who would like to comment or have anything they would like to address to the board?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any members of the public, just the committee.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, hearing none, nobody's out there, I will close public input then. Is there any other business that needs to be addressed this evening? Troy, do you have anything else?
I just wanted to give the committee a heads up that the one group that we've not heard from to date is the Rec Commission. It's a volunteer commission. And I know Chairman Weber, you sat on that as the liaison. So do you know where they're at and being, giving us some feedback? The library trustees, I know they're still working on, from what I understand, they're going to be looking at constructing a new library, but there's, for their ability to be able to have information like Chief Sergeant had this evening, they're not going to be in that kind of position. And then I know, I think that the cable, our Litchfield community television folks, they may have some input as far as, the condition of their studio. And when we look at having a discussion about reusing the old the existing police station space, there may be some interest in that space from the community television. So we still have some items left. The finance department, I know that I'm going to be working with our finance director and looking at the costs of new financial software. And we just don't have that data right now, but we're almost done. I think the biggest, committee that we're waiting for is the Rec Commission.
So the Rec Commission is pretty close to their final stuff. There's only two projects they're going to bring forth. One is putting lights on Dara, and the other one is paving the Dara parking lot. If they could be ready in time, do we want to knock them out on the 29th before we get into talking about utilization of properties? It'll get us another step closer to getting it all done.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to be ready, if they can be ready on the 29th, that would be wonderful.
Okay, I'll put a call into Andy Collins, who chairs that, to find out and make sure, because I know the two individuals that were spearheading it were pretty close to being done.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
And I'll reach out to the library trustees, and again, I'll work with the finance director and trying to get a cost estimate for that software.
Okay.
Now, Jay, once we get all these projects in, how long is it going to take you to aggregate all the data and give us the output?
Well, I'm starting to do that now just because we've got a really good amount of info. So it won't take me more than a few weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, great. Another thing I wanted to bring up, if I know, I'm not sure when things are going to be going back to normal, but I was considering probably, and Troy, maybe you want to reach out to Chief Sergeant, was to do a quick tour of the police department, if possible. I just want to see. I want to take a visual review of the property as it is right now, and is that something that you think can be arranged?
I'll talk to the chief about it, and you know, it may be that it definitely can be arranged. And I think just the logistics of it and trying to have the 6 feet of distance maintained, you know, we may have to break it up into 2 or 3 tours just to keep the group small. But maybe it could be all done in the same night, and we just, you know, but it can happen. It needs to be planned out properly. That's all.
Okay. So I may reach out to you. Obviously, I mean, we can wear masks or whatever. That's fine, and the social distancing, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
If there are other members of the committee who want to be in on that tour, just let me know. But I would like to do that.
Yeah. In hindsight now, you know, Chairman Weber, he's been through the facility. Mr. Cutter, you toured it last year. So actually, that's probably the first step, is determining who wants to tour the facility, and maybe the numbers aren't that large, so it's manageable.
So, I mean, if no one else, I mean, if people have already been through it, certainly you don't have to do it again. But I would like to just see it, and just so from my personal view, because I didn't have the opportunity to do that. So,
Right.
I've personally
Sounds a great place to check out.
Yeah, fantastic.
So
I'll-
benefit
you know,
printing.
I'll send an email out to the committee when we get off and see who wants the tour. Let's see what we have for a head count, and then I'll talk to Chief Sergeant about it.
Okay, and I may want. I don't know if it's possible, but well, I guess it goes through the school. I don't know, Brian. I don't know if this is something that maybe you can talk to Dr. Jetty if it's okay to have a walkthrough of Griffin Memorial at some point.
I can discuss it with him. I mean, right now the school's closed.
Right.
I'm certain we can arrange something at some point in time to go through the school. Absolutely.
Okay.
So let me check. We have actually a board meeting on Wednesday, and we can have that discussion.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So our next meeting is going to be June 29th at 6 p.m. And that's going to be, I assume that's still going to be Zoom meeting. Do we know any idea of, I mean, are we going to be going back into town hall? I know that things are opening up now that I understand June 29th, that everything's supposed to be opening up again. I don't know what the situation is in terms of the pandemic, but
You know, one of the problems is going to be, last Friday, I was in the conference room just trying to measure, you know, out where people would sit and the chairs. So even though they've lifted, you know, the gatherings, they've taken the 10 10-person cap off. The problem is the capacity of the room. When you have 6-foot distance, we think we can only probably put maybe 10 people in the room. So I think what you're going to find is that we're going to have a mixture of face-to-face board and committee members in the meeting room, but you're going to have to maintain, a certain capacity of that room. Some members are going to have to be virtual, and the public will, we're going to have to manage the public. Some of them, might be able to come in and give a public comment, but they may have to be just all virtual. So that's going to be the difficulty is going to be the determining the capacity of the meeting room, and that will dictate really how our meetings will be conducted face to face or continue to be a combination of face to face and virtual.
Okay. No, I was just curious. I know because I did hear that things are opening up again, but that's good to know. Okay, so this tentatively will be a virtual meeting, as it has been, unless things change in the interim. So,
Mr. Chairman, one question before we adjourn, if I may, and this is a question to the committee. I know Chief Sergeant presented a lot of good material. It was also presented through Mr. Brunel, I believe it was Mr. Brunel, through the WebEx, so it should have been presented on LCTV as well, with the design plans of the new station, the layout of the new station, that type of thing. Is this committee okay with me sharing that information on social media as well through my post update?
Since it was already published publicly, I have no issue with
it's
it.
a public meeting. Yeah, I don't
Public
see it.
information.
Mhm.
Thank
So
you.
I don't
Just
think-
for confirmation. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, great. Anybody have anything else before we adjourn? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
All right,
Second, third.
discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes 500. Thank you, everybody, for
everyone.
being on the call this evening, and we'll see you again on the 29th.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone. Be
Yeah.
well.
Have a good night.
Be well, be
Thanks.
safe. Good night, Steve.